Hello, I'm Jeanne Ives, and welcome to my podcast. This is The Real Story with Jeanne Ives, and I do not have a guest today, but I have some really important conversations I want to have with you. And so the first topic we're going to talk about is student debt reparations, as the Wallstreet Journal so cleverly called it. And then from there, we're going to talk about Illinois higher education, specifically the costs, the trends that have been going on, how expensive it is. That'll be the second segment. And the final segment of my podcast today is going to be just a smattering of items. I want to talk about crime in the suburbs, crime across the state. I mean, we had a record spree just even last weekend. We had a carjacking in the middle of the afternoon on a Sunday here in Oak Brook. It's just unbelievable, the crime that's happening. But I want to talk about that and a few other items, including the housing market. What do we see is going to be happening in the future, in the very near future, quite frankly, to the housing market? So we're going to cover a variety of topics. Again, this is my podcast. This is The Real Story with Jeanne Ives, where we talk about the real policies, the real issues that affect you as a taxpayer. These are policies from the state, federal, and local level, all combined. But first, before we start there, I do want to let you know we have a big event coming up. It's May 13th. It's going to be at the Abington Banquet Hall in Glen Ellen. I have columnist John Cass and radio talk show host Dan Proft joining us for a dinner and discussion about all sorts of policies Illinois-based. So join us there. You can go to breakthrough-ideas.com and you can get your ticket there. And as part of that deal, we have sponsorships going on. And so we've asked some businesses, would you like to sponsor a table at this informative event? And in doing so, they get some podcast time. So we have two great sponsors. One of them is netmotorcars.com. Netmotorcars.com. These guys make car buying so easy. It's on-the-spot financing, all major banks in-house funding deals, everything inside climate-controlled 30,000 square foot indoor showroom, tons of sports cars and convertibles and SUVs. It's your one-stop shopping experience. Ask for Michael Colby. He's the general manager of netmotorcars.com. He will personally take care of all of our supporters. So contact Michael Colby and get your, upgrade your car, get that new SUV. And then another important business sponsor to us is Kai's Restaurant at 705 North Avenue in Glendale Heights. Love Kai's. I mean, these are the people that when the lockdown began, they defied it, and instead on their marquee, they put, "We are Americans. We are free and open." And they remained open all through the lockdown. And guess what? The community responded and continued to support them. They are a trailblazing restaurant that defied Governor Pritzker's unlawful mandate and inspired hundreds of other Illinois businesses to also stay open. They're true leaders in the business community. Kai's is home to the best steak and seafood in Glendale Heights. From certified hand-cut Black Angus steaks to fresh seafood delivered daily, Kai's is committed to serving nothing but the best to their customers with an award-winning Zagat-rated executive chef. Kai's overlooks 6 lush acres of land filled with beautiful flower gardens, scenic ponds, and a rustic barn that's home to animals, including peacocks, swans, sheep, and ducks. Kai's landscape creates the perfect backdrop to our main dining room, featuring grand picture windows throughout. Our picturesque outside deck is the perfect setting for your summer dining plan. So again, that's Kai's on 705 North Avenue in Glendale Heights. We appreciate their sponsorship of our event on May 13th. All about Illinois and Illinois policy and politics. You'll enjoy yourself. So come on out, get your tickets. By the way, we are selling out fast. We've kind of set a limit so that everybody can have an enjoyable time. We don't want it too large that people feel like they're putting the way back. So those tickets are, we're probably 75%, if not 80% sold out. So go ahead, go online right now and get your ticket to that event. You'll not want to miss it. Back to our main topic of the day. And this is one that just gets under my skin. And maybe you missed it last year, but we found out through a Chicago Tribune article that part of the 2019 gas tax increase included a $25 million program to bail out other people's student loans. And the program went like this. It said that if you could owe up to $40,000 in student loan debt, and what would happen if you came in and you purchased a home in the state of Illinois and you held it for 3 years, all of your student loan debt up to $40,000 would be paid off, with an additional possible $5,000 going to either closing costs or other costs associated with that mortgage. And so that's our student loan bailout. You go in, you purchase a house in Illinois, you hold it for 3 years. Maybe you're a house flipper. This is a great deal. Maybe you went to college, that didn't really work out. You still have some student loan debt. Hey, I'm going to flip houses. So you go, you buy a house, you live in it for 3 years, and you flip it, and you leave, and all your student loan debt is forgiven. I mean, it's just outrageous that we were doing this in a bankrupt state like Illinois, but that's what they put in place in 2019 with your gas tax money, which they doubled your gas tax money. That was their solution. Well, we've known, it's been on the horizon for a long time. There were sort of veiled promises to look at this by the Democrat presidential candidates. And of course, Biden is now seriously looking at bailing out student loans. What a disaster. And the Wallstreet Journal wrote about this, they called it their whole article, and they put out this article on April 25th. They called it student loan reparations. Biden takes another big step toward mass debt forgiveness. You can read about it then if you want to. But the Biden administration this week announced another installment of its student loan forgiveness plan to fix longstanding failures in the program. The translation, according to the Wall Street Journal, taxpayers will pay again for the mistakes of Congress and the Obama administration. I mean, this is just crazy. To double down on it, Stephen Moore, as in his Committee to Unleash Prosperity, their entire hotline, their top article in their hotline email on yesterday, which was April 27th, was Biden floats the $1 trillion taxpayer bailout of student loan debt. And Stephen Moore, if they write that it might be the biggest giveaway in American history and goes much further than anything Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren have proposed. Biden now wants to cancel more than $1 trillion in student loans. He's already let college graduates delay payments for years. And this is a move that will thrill some of his most loyal supporters and financially strapped students nationwide, but it's a departure from campaign pledges to provide only limited relief. This plan makes suckers out of the millions of Americans who have felt honor-bound to pay off their debts. Even more lavishly subsidizing higher education will only push tuition even higher and make the next round of student loan debt even higher. But who would ever pay off a student loan after this blanket forgiveness plan? And so who will benefit? This is also a very interesting chart. And what we'll do is we'll probably try and have JP put this chart up in so that you can look at it as well. But the most recent Federal Reserve survey of consumer finances found that only 22% of families had student loan debt, and student debt has consistently been disproportionately held by higher income families. So the Democrat Party, which purports to want to really help those least able to afford college, are actually going to be bailing out those people with higher income anyway. I mean, this makes no sense whatsoever. It goes on to say canceling all student loans is supported by 19% of the voters, according to the latest poll, but times are getting desperate in the White House, and $1 trillion can buy a lot of votes from the deadbeat crowd. He is not kidding. It's just remarkable. But of course, there's about $1.6 trillion in student loan debt. And, it's basically people that went to grad school. There's people that bought degrees that don't actually pay them enough to pay off that student loan debt. I mean, it is a conundrum. It is a problem to have all this student loan debt. But is it our responsibility as taxpayers who maybe didn't get a chance to go through college, who maybe worked our way through college, who maybe went into the military to pay for college? Is it our responsibility to pay off somebody else's student loan debt? I ask you. The answer is no. It's overwhelmingly no. People are appalled that it's even happening. And in response to the Wall Street Journal article, of course, there were letters to the editor back on it, and I thought I'd read a couple of them because, it's not just you who are listening to this. It's not just me. It's people around the United States that are appalled that they would bail out somebody else's student loan. This letter writer from Massachusetts writes, if the Biden administration is so eager to forgive student debt, then it should be the policy of the next Republican administration to eliminate permanently all federal sources of college financing. If the government can't be trusted to enforce its contract with student borrowers on behalf of taxpayers, it shouldn't enter into the contract at all. Couldn't agree more. This massive increase in college costs has been fueled by a federal government that has said in 2007, they basically took away private financing of student loans and said, we're going to do it at the federal level. So the preponderance, like 90% of student loan debt, is held by the federal government, which gives easy money to borrowers without making sure that they're getting into qualified degrees, that they're actually going through their educational process on time. You know, why take 6 years to graduate? Some people are actually doing it in 3 years now because they have AP courses that count towards college credit at the high school level. But no. All this easy money is pushing people further into debt and increasing the cost at the college level because they know that they got a captive audience. Another letter writer says, your editorial concludes, as ever, the saps are those who worked to repay their debt on time. But in the sap contest, close competitors are those who never went to college, never had a federal student loan, and yet will wind up paying for those of higher socioeconomic status who did. No wonder the wealthy are going woke. Many progressive policies benefit them rather than the working saps. I couldn't agree more. And that was written by Professor Emeritus Paul Michelson from Huntington University in Huntington, Indiana, just next door. A great comment there. That's right. The saps are all of us who are going to put up with this. I mean, this is actually, to me, this is the number one reason to take Biden out of office, take Pelosi out of office, take Sean Casten out of office, Lauren Underwood, anybody who would agree to this, who would even entertain the idea of paying off somebody else's personal debt is not American. That's socialism. Straight up. But by the way, you here in Illinois, just to remind you again how we started this whole conversation, your Democrats, and oh, by the way, 20 stupid Republicans as well, that when they raised the gas taxes and all those fees, they also decided to bail out student loan debt. You could have literally never stepped a foot in the state of Illinois, found out that they're going to relieve $40,000 of student loan debt if you lived in a house here, if you bought a house and lived here for 3 years. And, you know, who wouldn't do that deal? Come here, find a job, buy a house, get $40,000 of student loan debt paid off. I mean, yeah, so those people need to be voted out of office too. That's where I stand. It's just incredible. And, you know, the other thing that we'll do is we'll put up that roll call of the people who voted for that student loan debt. And then as you're watching this, you can zoom in and read it. So I'm going to add that chart from the Committee to Unleash Prosperity that shows you who actually has the preponderance of student loan debt. And it's not the poor. It's not the poor. It's the wealthy. It's the wealthy. And so you're going to pay off their student loans. It's unbelievable. I had a friend. She has since moved to California. She was a professor. She had worked hard to get her PhD. I give her credit for that. But she had well over $100,000 in debt when she got a job in the public sector in California that she knew she was going to get a pension paid for. And so instead of paying off her student loan debt, she pulled out everything from her retirement that she had in a 401k because she had been working at a job that was not a public sector job. And, you know, did particular enhancements to her body, like a tummy tuck instead of paying off student loan debt. Do you really think we should pay off their student loan debt? How about people who take out student loan debt and, you know, because student loans can be used for personal living expenses and maybe lived more extravagantly than they should have using student loan debt? How about people who said, well, I'm getting my student loans, I'm getting my college education paid in certain other ways, but I'm going to take out some additional student loans and I'm just going to invest it. Should we pay off their student loan debt too, when all they did was throw it into the market as an investment vehicle? That's what, if you don't know that that's happening, I'm here to tell you, I know it's happening. That's exactly what's happening with student loans. They're being used for a variety of items. not even related to education. And you want hardworking Americans who didn't even go to college to pay it off, or hardworking Americans who already paid for their college or their kids' college to pay off student loan debt. This should be a deal killer for every single voter. I find it just outrageous. Okay, that's it for this segment. Next segment, we're going to talk specifically about Illinois and Illinois college costs. So stay with me. Thanks again. Welcome back to The Real Story with Jeanne Ives, and this is again our focus on higher education, and now specifically more about the state of Illinois. I'm going to start out this segment by first reading from a 2019 report. This is done by Illinois School News. It's by RKPRS Media. They wrote this report in March 12th of 2019, and this report is the basis for some additional information that I'll throw your way here in a minute. But reading from the report, it has to deal with Illinois colleges and universities, and they're finding ways to attract new students. It starts out by saying Illinois colleges and universities have tried to find new ways to attract more high school graduates from within the state, while young people increasingly are choosing to pursue their degrees elsewhere. New data show the problem is only getting worse. Figures released from the Illinois Board of Higher Education show that 48.4% of Illinois public high school graduates enrolled in four-year universities in 2017 attended out-of-state institutions. Now, that is not any different from what we have now. So about 50% of our public high school graduates are leaving to go to college out of state. Now, that figure is up from 46.6% in 2016 and about 45% in 2015. The figure has steadily climbed over the past 2 decades, according to state data. As recently as 2002, only 29.3% of Illinois high school graduates went out of state to four-year colleges. This isn't good news, Niall Robinson, the interim executive director, said. No kidding. He went on to say the outmigration trend continues to increase, and that means we're not only losing students to out-of-state colleges and university, we're likely losing them to other states for good. We want to educate our state students and see them flourish in jobs here in the land of Lincoln. That is not what's happening. The figures are not unexpected. Enrollment at most Illinois public universities has dropped significantly since 2015, declines that largely accelerated during the state budget impasse. Remember that? Under Mike Madigan playing games with Bruce Rauner, no budget and everything. So they've done a few different tricks. They talk specifically, though, like you've got the University of Alabama, for instance. They say they have invested heavily in scholarship packages for high-achieving students out of state. The number of Illinoisans enrolled in Tuscaloosa has increased more than tenfold in the past decade. In full disclosure, my son Andrew, the middle child, went to Ole Miss full ride because he had a high ACT score. My daughter Louisa graduates from Wheaton-Warrenville South this May. She's headed to Ole Miss as well, full ride because of her high ACT score. Our out-of-state competitors appreciate our smarter children, and not Illinois. Not Illinois. And in fact, I'm going to bring up another email from that woman. I believe I read it on my podcast before. We're going to read it again at the end here. But bolstered by dollars, several schools announced new financial aid programs. Rauner put in $25 million of state money for some merit-based scholarships. J.B. Pritzker has proposed boosting that funding by $10 million next year. So what is going on? In the current budget, Illinois put in 5% more, increased the budget for higher education 5% more. But so why are we having a problem? Why are we having a problem with high tuition? Why do we have a problem with kids choosing to go out of state? Why do we have a problem not providing merit scholarships? And all of that is true, by the way. All that's true. I'm going to read to you from a SHIO report in a minute. But before we get to that report, of course, this is what really sparked this topic is Illinois Policy Institute put out an article just this week, April 25th, about Illinois college students pay 46% higher tuition to prop up massive pension spending. See, that's what's really going on here. tuition keeps going up and up and up because we have massive pension debt at the higher ed level too. All of our public sector pensions are in disarray. And now who's going to pay for it? Well, kids are going to pay for it. So reading from the Illinois Policy Institute, it says Illinois spends 23% less on higher education than it did in 2007. University pension spending grew by 510% in that time. It doesn't take a math major to see why tuition has increased 46%. And then they go into one particular individual's situation. They talk about this Ethan Fazio. He's the oldest of 7 siblings, and said tuition prices and financial aid were top factors when considering higher education and whether to stay in Illinois. So he ended up getting a package. He ended up going to the University of Illinois, but goes on to say that it's still very expensive to go there. Fazio said without scholarships, he's not sure he would be in school. He thinks tuition at Illinois Public University has grown too fast in recent years, and an Illinois Policy Institute analysis supports that view. It's increased an average of 46% at Illinois' largest public universities in the past 15 years, 40% increase. Average in-state tuition in Illinois is the 5th most expensive in the nation. Why? We don't live in New York. We don't live in expensive California. We live in Illinois, the Midwest. Things should be fairly moderate here. They're not. Our signature university at Urbana-Champaign is in the heartland. It's not in Chicago. Why is it so expensive? Average in-state tuition in Illinois is the 5th most expensive in the nation. And we have any wonder about why nearly 50% of our public high school graduates choose to go to college out of state? Well, this is why. They go on to say that state universities' retirement system pension payments made up just 9% of state higher education spending in 2007. Now they take 44% of those dollars. 44% of money going to higher education is spent on pensions that are unaffordable. That's where your money's going. That's what you're getting out of your tuition. Funding for the CSRS pensions will grow to consume 46 cents of every dollar spent by the state in 2023. But CSRS, even though we're spending all this money on pensions, it has less than half the money it's going to need to meet obligations. It's not a healthy pension fund at all. The pension deficit is over $25 billion with a B, up from $7.3 billion just 15 years ago. Subtract the pension spending, and Illinois has actually decreased total higher education dollars by 23% in 15 years. So when we started the article and we said higher education dollars spent by the state have decreased 23% in 15 years, that's spending going to core services, actual education. But actually, spending has increased at the state in total when you include the pensions. The state has increased spending on university retirements by 510%. That translates to roughly $800 million fewer dollars for school operations in 2022. And then it gives you, in this article, you can look it up at Illinois Policy Institute. You can go to .org. You can look at this article yourself, and you can read the chart. And it gives a little bit of a comparison here, and we'll put this into the graphic as well as you watch this podcast. If you're watching, if you're listening, sorry, you're just going to have to listen to me. But in 2007, Southern Illinois, Carbondale, you had tuitions of $7,795. Now in 2022, 60% increase to $16,882. For University of Illinois Champaign-Urbana, 2007, $10,324. Now in 2022, 39% increase to $19,353. So University of Illinois Champaign-Urbana, very good engineering school. My son graduated from there. He was ROTC. That's how he went through there. But which is why we shouldn't pay off anybody's student loan debt, because he worked his way through doing that. But good engineering school. So was Purdue. But what has Mitch Daniels said? he's told his board, we are not going to raise tuition over $10,000, and that's where he's held it for the last 10 years. But not the University of Illinois. It's never been under $10,000 in the last decade, at least, because in 2007 it was over $10,000. So this is the conundrum that we find ourselves in. They go on to say, even paying out-of-state tuition prices to attend the most popular universities in North Dakota, South Dakota, or neighboring Missouri, Illinois students stand to save on tuition costs over the Illinois alternative. So even if you had to pay out-of-state tuition in some of these other universities, you're going to be better off than trying to pay in-state tuition in your home state that your parents probably, most likely, maybe if they've been living here for 30 years, 20 years, paying taxes for all that time, and yet they can't afford to send their kids to school in this state. Meanwhile, the universities, I'll be honest with you, they're illegal immigrants. They're getting taxpayer-funded grants and other institutional support. They passed that legislation, I think, back in 2019, that they're eligible for those illegal immigrants, DACA students. They said that illegal immigrants can sit on as student trustees on university boards. They passed that bill, too. I blocked that bill, by the way, when I was in Springfield as a legislator. I blocked that bill a couple times. When I left, they came back and passed it. Guess there wasn't enough opposition. So that is what's going on in the state of Illinois. Looking further, though, we can even get some more information by going to the State Higher Education Finance information, and you can visit SHEEO.org. That's SHEEO.org. They do all sorts of data and on school finances and school enrollment and everything else. So if you look at this report, it's pretty informative. And I am looking at their what they call their grapevine report. And it shows you Illinois averages and Illinois costs, and then they show you U.S. averages. So a lot of people want to say the reason the tuition is up 46% is because the state's not funding them. That is categorically false. Categorically false. First of all, let's go back to just their general report. When you look at public education, this is from the SHEEO report. When you look at I'm trying to get to the one chart I want. Here we go. Public higher education appropriations per full-time equivalent by state. So this is how much your state is appropriating to higher education per full-time equivalent student, okay, by state. Can anybody guess? And of course, I don't have a conversation going here, but can anybody guess where Illinois lands? You would think it's pretty low. You would think that the state doesn't really fund education because we have 46% increase in tuition. Not true. Illinois, since I've been looking at this report, and I've been watching this report for at least 5 years, at least, Illinois still remains number 3 in terms of its state support to higher education per full-time equivalent. We're number 3. Wyoming is first, but let's face it, Wyoming's a very, very small state. And when you have to have a base amount of services provided by any university, you're just going to be spending more. D.C. is second, District of Columbia, and then Illinois. Illinois is third. Almost $18,000 per full-time equivalent student do we spend on state support. All right. Another interesting note is that when you look at public higher education state financial aid per full-time equivalent, well, Illinois ranks 16th. So we're spending a lot. We have a lot. This is the point I'm trying to make here. We're spending a lot. When you look across the entire U.S. per full-time equivalent student, we're giving higher ed a lot of money. We're number 3. But in terms of financial aid, where's that financial aid going to? Where's that money going to? It's not going to financial aid. We rank 16th. 16th. and we're in a dramatic drop down from like some of the biggest people, and we're just above the average. We're just above the average. So the money's not getting to the students. It's going to administration. It's going to pensions. It's going to things like that. Looking further at just the Illinois report, and you can, again, go to SHEEO, SHEEO.org, and you can look at these financial reports. And now looking at the state-specific profile for Illinois. Education appropriations, Illinois, for a 4-year college, $19,220. For a 2-year college, it's $11,624. That's where I said it's just under $18,000. That's an averaging. But in the U.S., the average is $8,392. That's the average that a state gives per full-time equivalent in state support. We are over double the average in terms of state support to higher education. It's just that, remember, 44% of that is going to somebody's pension. It's not going to the student. It's not going to the classroom. It's going to somebody's pension. There you go. We have a pension problem in the state. I think that I've talked about that before. Not sure, but I think that I have. So, here's the deal. You bail out student loans, and people just continue to take student loans and maybe expect a bailout in the future. What do you think these universities are going to do? They're going to increase the cost again because they think that this is an endless money pit, an endless pit of money that you can just borrow, and then the debt's going to get forgiven, or you can go to public service, which isn't the military, by the way. The idea that some of these public service jobs are getting also bailed out, I have a problem with that. Military is military. People have always known that you're going to get some sort of a student loan, student credits for having served. But the rest of this, some of this public service, I'm not buying some of it. Maybe some of the doctors who serve in really communities that do not have that type of support, or nurses, I get that, fine. But we have to have some moderation on what we're calling public service, by the way, before we bail out more of that. So this is what's going on. If you're bailing out student loans to people who went to school in the state of Illinois, all you did was help bail out a pension program plan. That's what you helped do. So there you go. Pay attention, folks. Pay attention and figure out how to make things better. So next segment's going to be a little bit of this and that. Thank you. Welcome back to The Real Story with Jeanne Ives. Again, I want to invite you all to join us on May 13th for our dinner and discussion with Dan Proft and John Cass. We're going to be talking about Illinois and where we're headed, and are we going to turn Illinois upside down in 2022? They'll have some answers for us, I hope. You'll enjoy it. It's dinner and discussion. Doors open at 5:30, cocktail hour, great dinner, lots of friends, good times. Go to breakthrough-ideas.com to get a ticket. We are, I think, getting close to 80% sold out. We've only got a couple weeks until that event. So get your ticket as soon as you possibly can. And I also want to highlight that we do have business sponsorships, and part of that business sponsorship means that I'm going to just basically give you a shout out on my podcast. So first business I want to highlight is netmotorcars.com. These guys make car buying so easy. They have on-the-spot financing, all major banks, in-house funding deals. Everything inside a climate-controlled facility, over 30,000 square feet indoor showroom, tons of sports cars, convertibles, and SUVs. It's your one-stop shopping experience, and if you get there, ask for Michael Colby. He's the general manager of netmotorcars.com. He'll personally take care of any of our supporters. Again, netmotorcars.com. Go ahead and get your sports car now. And then another business sponsor of ours was Kai's Restaurant. And of course, if you remember, Kai's is the trailblazing restaurant that defied Governor Pritzker's unlawful mandate and inspired hundreds of other Illinois businesses to stay open. My favorite thing about them is they blatantly stuck their nose in the air to Governor Pritzker and on their marquee said, "We are Americans. We are free and open." I personally like their steak sliders and their French onion soup. When you go to Kai's, say hello to Terry. He's the owner. And you'll find the best steak and seafood in Glendale Heights at Kai's. They are located at 705 North Avenue in Glendale Heights. So, again, thank you to our sponsors for that event. It's going really well. And again, we're very close to being sold out, so get your tickets soon. So on this podcast, this part of the segment, I just wanted to cover a few things that are very concerning. One of them is really, again, crime. A crime. We don't seem to be able to get that anything solved with crime. And I'm looking here. You know, you had last weekend, there were at least 42 people who were shot, 8 of them fatally in shootings across Chicago over that weekend, just that weekend. I mean, that's amazing. 42 people shot. Think about that. I know it just kind of rolls off the tongue now. We're kind of used to it. We should not be used to this. If you go to a website called heyjackass.com, that's actually what it's called, heyjackass.com. You know, April to date, 42 shot and killed. Shot and wounded is 185. Total shot, 227. So that's April to date. If you go year to date, 160 shot and killed. Shot and wounded, 689. Total shot, 849. It's just horrible, the amount of crime that is still happening. That nothing's been abated. They passed the Safety Act. That became a joke. Nothing happened there. I mean, it's just unbelievable that we put up with this. I don't know why we put up with it. But it's not just in the city, and you everybody knows that. Oakbrook Mall, last weekend, a family was robbed at gunpoint in a parking lot outside the Oakbrook Center, Neiman Marcus. This I'm reading from an ABC7 report. A family was robbed at gunpoint on Sunday in a parking lot outside an Oakbrook Mall store. A stolen Infiniti described as blacked out pulled up to the family of 3 near the Oakbrook Center, Neiman Marcus at about 3 p.m. on Sunday, broad daylight. 4 to 5 men presented a firearm through an open window and demanded their property. The family handed over their property, and the group of men fled the scene at high speed. No injuries were reported. The case is under investigation. Police did not provide any further information about the incident. Broad daylight on a Sunday at a mall that, I mean, most people in suburbia have been to there. I mean, I go there once in a while, pick up this and that. Broad daylight. 4 to 5 men pull up. I mean, that's, what the hell? What the hell is going on here? You've got to wonder. Well, you know what it is? It's Democrat policies at work. That's what's going on here. It's shameful. On another note, switching to an entirely different topic, this is from the Center Square. Research shows some homeowners fear a housing bubble impacting sale decisions. I don't disagree. Now we know that the Federal Reserve is ticking up interest rates. Those are expected to go up again in May and in June and in July. They're already telling people we're going to raise interest rates. Well, what does that do? First of all, if you've got credit card debt and it's linked to that rate, then it's going to tick up too. And that's going to eat out of any of your money that you might want to spend for other items. So, you know, if you have credit card debt, now's the time to really just hunker down and pay that off. But it's really also going to impact the housing market. We're already at over 5% on average for a mortgage rate. And you've also got a seller's market, which has been absolutely fueled by all this free and extra money that's been out there. You've also got higher wages. Good. I'm happy to have higher wages, but the higher wages are not keeping up with inflation, and the inflation is also hitting the housing market. So you've got this cycle going on right now that at some point is going to come to a head. And when it does, there are going to be people that have bought into homes that they can no longer afford. And when that happens, you're looking at 2008 all over again. You're looking at foreclosures. You're looking at evictions. You're looking at stagnant housing prices. And in this, according to this article, it shows that some people are putting their houses on the market because they think a housing bubble is on the way. According to Clever Real Estate, 45% of home sellers believe the market is at risk of crashing in 2022. Researcher Matt Brannon said the fear is causing some homeowners to alter their plans. No doubt. As the market has progressively heated to a boiling point, most real estate experts agree that the housing market isn't nearing a bubble. Lenders were no longer making bad mortgages that could trigger another foreclosure crisis in 2008. But how can the system handle skyrocketing home prices, rising mortgage rates, property taxes, and rental prices at the same time? Some believe it can't. So you're hearing a couple different things. Experts that I've talked to, it sounds like we're in for trouble. They say the article says we're not in a housing bubble just yet, but we're skating close to one if prices continue rising at the current pace, said George Ratui, manager of economic research at Realtor.com. Some markets will see a correction if mortgage rates continue to rise, in which sales will drop and prices will follow. In Illinois, homes across the state sold quicker in March than they did in March of last year. As median prices continue to rise and interest rates inched higher, property taxes in some areas also are likely to spike. According to Illinois realtors, statewide home sales, though, were down 9.2% in March compared to February. So there's always, as always, there are going to be locations that are better than others. Home prices are actually coming down in some areas of the country, including Chicago. Realtor.com reports that the Windy City is 9th in the country for locations where home prices are falling the most. The top 3 cities are Toledo, Ohio, Rochester, New York, and Detroit, Michigan. That's exactly where the company we want to be keeping. Toledo, Ohio, Rochester, New York, and Detroit. Oh, great. We're right there with Detroit. Falling home prices in the area. Okay, looking at one more story that I found very interesting. And this, again, was highlighted in the Committee to Unleash Prosperity email. The CDC admits that at least 58% of the population, 75% of the children, now have natural immunity. The CDC has finally updated their survey of antibody seroprevalence, a measure of the percentage of the population that has the N protein antibodies. They found that as of February 2022, 57.7% of the total U.S. population had antibodies, including 74.6% of children under 18. Antibodies wane over time, so people infected in earlier waves may no longer test positive, although they still likely have robust immune responses via other mechanisms. And vaccinated people may never develop N protein antibodies because in some cases the vaccine-induced S protein antibodies can neutralize an infection without N seroconversion occurring. Bottom line, most Americans and nearly all kids have likely already had COVID by February of 2022. That is really good news. That said, there's one other thing that I want to highlight. And this comes from WirePoints, who is very good at giving us the COVID and COVID information. WirePoints has been doing a great job ever since the pandemic began. They have been collecting the data on Illinois. And they have a comprehensive report on this. I think it's every day. Or maybe they're going down to just a few times during the week because they're not getting data as frequently as they did before. One of the most interesting things to me is the number of breakthrough deaths that you see. So in this case, for breakthrough deaths or due to COVID-19 or complications, they have a chart in here that just shows you the number of breakthrough deaths. So if I'm looking at this correctly, weekly COVID deaths including breakthrough deaths. So breakthrough deaths are seen in the the light green. Deaths of unvaccinated and partially vaccinated are in the dark green, and breakthrough deaths are in the light green. Well, last week there were 35 breakthrough deaths and only 12 from unvaccinated. 2 weeks before that, you had 54 breakthrough deaths and only 34 unvaccinated. This week so far, you had 40 unvaccinated deaths, and you had, what's that number? 16 breakthrough deaths. But when you look at this chart, it's pretty alarming because really from probably beginning of March on, the majority of weeks, you had more breakthrough deaths than you had of the unvaccinated or partially vaccinated. So I think our researchers have a lot more work to do on the effectiveness of the vaccines and what's going on with these breakthrough deaths. But the good news is that it looks like the majority of people, well over the majority of people, and 75% of children have already been exposed to COVID and have the antibodies to protect them from it in the future. Good news. Okay, that concludes my podcast. Again, if you want to join us for May 13th, go to breakthrough-ideas.com and sign up and get a ticket. We lowered our price this year too, by the way, so we're trying to defeat inflation. We'll have some funny stuff going on our table decorations surrounding that as well. So join us on May 13th. Have a great day.